Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Monday, December 21st. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Sugar Bowl against Clemson is in 11 days, the game against Michigan in 341 days. Heading into the weekend, it felt like a rematch with Clemson was almost inevitable, but I think we all thought that was going to be in the Rose Bowl, not the Sugar. Sunday, Alabama chose to play in the Rose Bowl instead. As the number one seed, they had that option. That game will be in Arlington, Texas this year instead of Pasadena. And they're going to allow about 16,000 people into the game, while the Sugar Bowl is going to be more like 3,000. So that was enough to change Alabama's choice at the last minute and send the Buckeyes and Tigers to New Orleans instead. My guest this morning is Buckeye Scoop beat reporter Tony Gerdeman. And Tony, I don't know about you, but just all year, it has just felt like the Buckeyes and Clemson were just absolutely destined to play again this season.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's something that Ohio State has been looking forward to. Something that they've been pointing to. I know Ryan Day has said that the goal is to get to Indy and then whatever else happens after that. But we were there. We saw the way the players left the field, and they know they let that one get away. And it's not something that they just, it is what it is. We had a fun season. And they've, as much as they focus on Michigan, I'm sure there are some thoughts about Clemson during the offseason, during the summer, and even in the past few years. So, yeah, we know that there's only a few teams that can make the playoff. Pretty good chance that Ohio State and Clemson were going to meet up again. And I remember talking to Matt Connolly, our buddy Matt, who covers Clemson for the state newspaper there, and said, I think last year it's like, well, see you next year after the game. It's like, this is what we do now. We'll see you next year's game, wherever it might be. And this is it's come true. Here we are. And maybe didn't look so likely a few months ago, but once the season started, the inevitability there kind of kicks in.
Yeah, Ohio State this year is the 3 seed. Clemson is the 2. Little old Clemson. You're going to hear me hearing a lot of Dabo. Enjoy that for the next week and a half. Tigers favored by 8 points. That's up from 6.5 when it opened. It opened at almost a touchdown. I mean, and it went up 1.5 in a matter of just hours. So, with some of the uncertainty around Justin Fields' thumb and some other things with the Ohio State program right now, that feels about right. And I can understand why people are kind of hammering Clemson at the moment too.
Yeah, and interestingly, like a few weeks ago, it was Ohio State by 4 or 5 when against Clemson by some of the lines. But yeah, with the questions about, I don't even know how much it's the questions about Justin Fields, although sprained thumb is no small thing, even though Ryan Day said he would be fine. But you don't know much about Ohio State. What you do know about the secondary, there are concerns, and we know that sure, Ohio State's defense has looked good the last 2 games, but it's hard to compare Northwestern and Michigan State to Trevor Lawrence and what Clemson can do. So I would assume Vegas and the people placing the bets have no thoughts that the defense is fixed for Ohio State. Until they see it, they're going to assume that it isn't. And that's probably a safer assumption than assuming all is perfectly well.
And, Clemson does a very good job of getting themselves ramped up to the point where they're sort of peaking towards the end of the year. This seems like that's probably kind of the case again this year, where they were not, they're not always great in the early and middle parts of the year. And then you get to the ACC championship game. And I mean, they just turned Notre Dame into a spot on Saturday. That was as dominating a performance as you're going to see against a team that's, was theoretically the number 2 team in the country and got beaten so bloody on Saturday night that it was like, well, they just barely squeaked into the playoff as the 4 seed in what was, I think, a pretty close vote. That's sort of the Clemson side. In addition to on the Ohio State side, and we talked about the Justin Fields thing. One of the other uncertainties around Ohio State is, they've been missing some guys recently as a result of COVID protocols. And the Buckeyes got some very good news on Sunday, which is the Big Ten is lowering its required sit-out period for players diagnosed with COVID from 21 days to 17. Now, that's still longer than the other conferences, but that works out. That is potentially a very big distinction. I mean, anyone who tested positive last Wednesday or before would be eligible to return and to play in the semifinal game against Clemson. Ryan Day sounded like he thought that might be a pretty significant difference for his team.
Yeah, and mention Chris Olave as a guy who possibly could be back. Baron Browning as well, provided they pass all of the cardiac testing, are good to go and able to practice and are feeling well. Those are the only two guys he mentioned, but those were the two biggest names missing, other than Drew Chrisman, the punter. And we don't know that they will be back, but based on that 17 days, it sounds like there's a decent chance, and that would be significant. I mean, even with assuming Justin Fields didn't hurt his thumb early on, he was still missing Chris Olave, and it was clear. And this is a guy who hasn't played without Chris Olave, and then you see what happens when he doesn't have him. It's as good as Julian Fleming looked early on. There's still a level of comfort with Chris Olave that Fields only has with Garrett Wilson and Olave. When he's not there, then start questioning things, start maybe delaying how quickly your reads are, and then you get hurt, and then all of it kind of just goes to heck. So getting Olave back would be huge. But again, it's still, you're coming back from not playing 3 weeks. Ryan Day talked about how the offensive line had played. Josh Myers and Thayer Munford and Nick Petit-Frere had played one game in the past month before returning against Northwestern. And yes, they played very well, 399 yards rushing. But there's still this ramp up that all season long, it's like they're either trying to get a rhythm or shake off rust. And it's almost like, well, I guess the best way to get a rhythm is by shaking off the rust. And I don't know that the two mix. And Dabo said this is the best that Clemson is playing right now. Ryan Day is, you have to play your best, but you're still figuring out who you are, figuring out what you have, and then trying to make all of it work. It's really difficult.
And if we know one thing about Ohio State fans, they love to hear from Dabo Swinney. They love it. They love everything he has to say. Find him a very genuine person. He was pretty outspoken last week about teams who had played far fewer games, and the idea that maybe they hadn't earned a spot in the playoff. And then as soon as the playoff field was announced, what did Dabo have to say about the matchup on the conference call, the matchup with Ohio State?
Oh, he totally respects Ohio State and what Ryan Day has done, and it's a very talented team and one of the toughest teams in the nation, and undefeated, has done what they need to do, very talented, and just a quality program. And I don't know why anybody would think he had anything bad to say, because from what I heard today, nothing but the utmost respect for the Buckeyes and the season they've had this year.
Now, this is the third time in 5 seasons that they have met in the playoffs. And I thought this was interesting that he was asked on the conference call, do you consider Ohio State a rival? I thought that was an interesting question and also an interesting answer.
Yeah, and it was one that caught me by surprise, because this is usually an answer where the coaches are like, oh, no, it's not like that. It's just we play each other. But no, his answer was, yeah, I guess pretty much we see them as a rival because every game we play against them is gigantic. And it's usually a playoff game. There was a 2013 game that was a BCS game. But when these two teams get together, the stakes are very, very high. And I liked, Tom, I'm going to say it, I like something that Dabo said. I like something that Dabo said. Hate me if you want, but I thought it was a good answer, and it's an answer that I don't know if most coaches would have gone to. But yeah, the fact that they had played pretty frequently, which helps. The stakes help. The fact that Clemson keeps winning probably helps. I wonder what Ryan Day would say to that, and probably something we should ask him when we get to talk to him, because he might say something similar, or maybe it's one of those, well, we have to win before it's a rivalry type of thing that you hear other coaches say. But I like the answer, and I agree with him. Ask Ohio State fans if they think it's a rivalry. There's one team that they want to beat more, and some fans would say there's no team they would want to beat more.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those stats that you're going to hear a whole bunch in the next 11 days, but Clemson is the team that Ohio State has played the most of any program without winning. Clemson is number 1, 0-4, I believe, and Florida State is number 2 at 0-. So, yeah, that would be a big monkey for Ohio State to get off its back if they could win the semifinal. Also, they get to play for the national. But also, I think primarily the monkey would be the big concern. One of the things that was sort of an interesting thing that the two coaches sort of differed on was, okay, who has the advantage? These two teams have this is a very unusual season where you have two teams coming in with wildly different amounts of work under their belts. Ryan Day, Ohio State, has played 6 games. He talked about the fact that that's a concern. You want to have those game reps. That's a disadvantage to not have those game reps and to be kind of where you would normally be like mid-October, and it's here we are at the end of the season. Dabo, of course, took the other approach, which was, yeah, we had to play 11 games. And we're all beat up right now. So, I mean, is one of them right? Is one of them wrong? Is the truth somewhere in the middle? Like, how do you make it? What do you make of that?
What I know is that Ryan Day would have much preferred to play 10 games rather than 6. And you take whatever happens in those extra 4 games happens. If you lose somebody, that's part of the risk of building your best self and putting your best self out there and making the team as good as it can be. And Dabo, I'm sure he has appreciated the fact that he's gotten to play all of those games. He knows everything about his team. His team right now playing better than it has all season. Would that have been the case in Game 6? I don't think it was. And so you get better and you get better and you get better. You go back to the Jim Tressel thing, where September is for contenders or September is for pretenders, and November is for contenders. Now it's December is for contenders. But it's the later in the season, the better you want to be playing. You want to be playing your very best at the end of the season. And Ohio State is still in the middle of their season, but not just the middle of their season, because it stops, it starts, it stops, it starts. And that's terrible for your gas mileage, and it's terrible for reaching your peak as a football team. So Ryan Day, yes, they're relatively healthy in terms of like physical ailments, but they're missing more guys than pretty much would assume anybody in the playoffs, and that fluctuates. So you don't know who's coming back. You have assumptions, but you don't know who you're going to be losing. Now that's a problem that everybody has. Anybody could pop at any time, or at least those who haven't tested positive recently. But there's no doubt that Ryan Day would rather have 10 games, 9 games, 8 games than just 6 games. And there's no doubt that Dabo likes the fact that he got to play as many. Now, did they need all 10 or 11 of those games? No. But they're better for having them, because it's not like they're playing their best ball and they just beat a top 3 team by 24 points. So it would seem that their schedule has helped them out considerably.
Yeah, and I just went back and looked. This will be Ohio State's 7th game, the Sugar Bowl. Clemson's 7th game this year was Boston College.
There you go.
I don't know if you remember the Boston College Clemson game, but Clemson came out real slow. Boston College built up a huge lead, and Jeff Hafley called a very aggressive game and fake punts and all sorts of stuff. And they built up a big halftime lead, and Clemson ended up coming back and winning it 34-28, but was very nearly a disaster for Clemson. And that was the week before the first Notre Dame game. So, yeah, I mean, it would be hard to argue that Clemson has not come a long way since that point. So I would maybe chalk one up for Ryan Day there, that the Clemson is probably in a better place after 11 games than they were after 7. This is we are 4 days from Christmas. And normally that's like like my kids are already off school for the year. Like, okay, they're done. Everyone's like ramping down. Somehow we have found ourselves in a spot where it's like, oh, this is going to be a crazy busy week for us. Like, we're going to have a ton of stuff to do. What's our schedule this week? We talked to Ryan Day on Tuesday, right? Who else?
Right, Tuesday, and then players on Wednesday, and then Day possibly again on Thursday. So yeah, it's going to be plenty to go through. It's going to be very different than in years past. Everything is still via Zoom, and this was it's unfortunate that we're going to be missing all of the abilities to talk to players and get to know so many different players during bowl week. That's where you get to talk to the young guys that you never get to talk to, find out what's going on with them, and so we'll be missing that and just making the best as everybody is this time of year, this entire year. But yeah, we will be talking to plenty of people and seeing who does the best job of saying nothing at all.
This is at this point, like, I almost don't care. Like, no one has to say anything. There are so many interesting storylines. I mean, I sat down and just started making a list of like, well, okay, we've got almost 2 weeks just off the top of my head, if no one says anything, here's stories we could write. And it was just like, okay, I have already gotten to the point where I do not have time to write all these stories between now and kickoff of the game. So, pick an angle, pick any angle you like. You could do a story a day on Chris Olave. Boy, that's a story that's had some twists and turns in the last 12 months or so. So yeah, this is going to be a fascinating week and a half. That means it would be a great time to be a member of Buckeye Scoop. Christmas just 4 days away. You're running out of time. Someone is going to go, hey man, I didn't forget, but if I needed to get you one more thing for Christmas, what would you like me to get you? Someone is going to say that, and your answer is a membership at Buckeye.com. Get an annual membership now, and then when they forget to ask you again next year until the last minute, just say, hey, renew it. It's fine. Easy. Help me help you. I'm going to make your life easy by letting you get me a membership at Buckeye.com. And if you have someone that you really love, someone who truly means the world to you, that would be a great gift to give as well. This is going to be a very busy couple weeks. Tony and I and maybe a third member of the Scoop team will be headed down to New Orleans in I don't know. We haven't actually booked our travel yet, and here we are like a week out. So we should probably get on that pretty soon. But we will be headed down to New Orleans to cover the lead up to the game itself, the fallout from the game, and all of that. And again, boy, there's going to be a lot to talk about. So you can check that all out at BuckeyeScoop.com. We will also probably have our third and probably fourth straight week of nearly daily Buckeye Weekly podcasts. Look at the thrill on my face as I say those words out loud. You can find Buckeye Weekly and all of our great podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of those. Leave us a 5-star rating and review, and make sure you subscribe there so you don't miss a single one of our 472 shows this month. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.